Welcome to Griffin Uncut, the Griffin podcast, where we talk about basically how the sausage is made. So the insides of the fintech industry. And today, it's a very internally looking episode. I'm joined by Jenna Baker, who is Griffin's Chief People Officer. And instead of talking about how other people do stuff, we're going to talk about how we do stuff. And specifically, we're not going to get into the sort of the technical stuff. We're not going to get into go to market. We're not going to get into AI. I mean, we might, maybe, I don't know. But instead, we're going to focus on the most human elements of this, which is culture and people, and how we think about culture and people and building an organization of humans in the world today. So, Jenna, do you want to give a little bit of background on you and what you were doing before you joined us? And then I guess this is a little bit of like your episode to run. So we'll take it away.
Sure. I'm just at a blank. I forgot who I am.
We were having a normal conversation, and then the camera started rolling, and holy shit.
Yeah.
That's all right. Swear jar. Tink.
Yeah, exactly. No. I guess that's why, because you're the professional podcaster, and I'm a long-time listener, first-time speaker. So I don't know why I do when there's cameras and lights on me, but I will try my best and to host a really enjoyable, nice conversation about how we think about culture at Griffin. Before Griffin, I have spent too long to admit, I suppose, working in like startup banks, fintechs, all that sort of stuff, to the point where I've been conditioned to think there is no better place to work, no better place to grow your career than in this environment. You've got the highs, the lows, the ups and downs, the wins, and all the exciting things along the way. So having been with Griffin for 2 years, we've seen lots of those along the way. So I'm sure they will come out in our conversation and what it's meant for culture and the people here and what we think about and what we care about. But yeah, I feel very lucky to have this job. I think it's the best job that you can have in an exec team. I think there's so much variety to it. There's so much potential. And, you really do get to impact the success of the business in a really meaningful way. And it just always has felt like such a fulfilling, worthwhile way to spend your time. There's nothing much more that I care more deeply about, really. So, and with Griffin, I've had the chance to kind of paint the picture of what we think it should be with the culture, how we think it should evolve. And that's just really cool. Together.
Really cool.
It's a partnership.
Yeah, it is a partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think of you as my sort of design partner. And I do think of Griffin as like, as a company, right? Like obviously it's a commercial enterprise, but at a human level, it's a designed product. The company is a designed product. And the consumers of that product are both the people who, live and work within it, as well as everybody else who touches it in whatever form.
Yeah. The way that I try and talk about it in my team, which we call the cultivate function, which is a cool alternative way of naming a people function, is essentially thinking of the people experience as a product. So if it's a subscription product, what are you doing? How are you iterating on that experience and their day-to-day to make them feel like if you're asking them at the end of the month, do you want to stay? It's an easy yes. It's not something that you should just be complacent about. It's like something you have to actively, intentionally think about every single day. Like, what is the experience that you're designing for? Even if you know that you're not going to get there. Now you have to have that end vision in mind, like the 10-star, 11-star experience. Like, what is it that you want it to be one day? And what's one step towards that? And I think we're quite uncompromising on that. I don't think that's something that we ever have compromised through any decision. We're always thinking about the people experience and how we want people to feel, what they want to do differently, how to make it better. And that's kind of how we operate as a team. We sort of think of ourselves as a product function.
It's interesting that you mentioned the like analogy to like a subscription product, because that's actually not how I think about it from a product perspective. I think of it as a services product, right? So like a subscription product, like let's be real, we've got a dozen, maybe more each. And sure, we use a bunch of those, but there's also probably plenty that we go like, a month goes by, we don't touch it. Whereas to me, and maybe this is like it's an odd analogy. It may even be like a little bit of an American analogy, but I think a lot about the kind of the university experience, which is, in the States, generally one that you pay for, and in some cases pay an uncomfortable amount of money for. And so, but it is like, it's a fully immersive experience, right? Like everything that you're doing, the community that you're part of, it's a very, very holistic kind of thing. I think that tracks pretty well to work. The main difference is like now we're paying you rather than you're paying us. But that kind of, holistic, deep immersion, the relational nature, the community oriented nature, is much closer to how I sort of tend to think about it. And then, that can map, again, not perfectly, but somewhat interestingly down to, I'm going to choose to take these classes, right? I'm going to choose to work on these projects. I'm going to choose to work on, I'm going to take this major. I'm going to work in this function, right? Like there's a lot of choice within that like wider infrastructure that people have, and the choice of experience and the sort of nature of the service that's provided inform, the overall kind of quite unique service experience that you end up having as you go through that institution.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said in there. I think the service-oriented aspect of it is for sure like a massive feature.
Yeah. This was not on our list of Q&A, by the way. This is like literally just us rambling.
Yeah, as you will find, most of it becomes. One of the things we were going to start our conversation off with was the bigger meta question, really, which is, what is culture to you? What does that mean? Someone says, how do you define culture?
So, I mean, if I'm just going to grab for like the definition that we use off the shelf, right? It's like who we are and how we work, right? And like that is how we define it, and we're very structured and formal, right, within Griffin when we talk about this, and the sort of the who we are, we think of as trait, right, or a set of traits, right? So these are characteristics that describe the people that we want to hire, the people who work here, and they're used as both selection and retention kind of criteria, right? So selection criteria in the sense that like, we proactively seek out people that we think are really kind or really thoughtful or really resilient, and the opposite of that like is also a corollary, right? So if we have negative indicators for that, we're going to go, okay, cool, you're probably not going to be a good fit here. And then the second part of that, like how we work, is very different, right? So this maps to behaviors rather than traits. And these are things that are unique to Griffin actually as an organization. They're less unique to the people. And so the interesting thing about these are things that we can teach you, right? And so we run a highly, highly transparent organization. The level of transparency with which we operate is not A, natural for companies, and B, natural for people. But it's actually, it's quite easy for you to pick up our ways of working if you are immersed in that environment and the kind of like normative behaviors are being modeled for you by leadership, by the entire company. I think, we approach this from like a hyper-structured perspective because from experience, the companies that we, Alan and I, my co-founder, have worked in or around, we've seen, the companies that kind of approach this from a structured and a design perspective end up with the culture that they, want to have. Whereas if you are unintentional, then you'll end up with whatever you end up with, right? And that may not be necessarily a good thing. And even if you design the culture deliberately, you also, it requires a level of kind of constant maintenance and care and curation. We use this term cultivate like very, very deliberately, because with the best of intentions, sometimes the sort of the patterns that you think that you want may have unintended consequences. And it also is like totally natural for organizations to change their needs as they grow and evolve. And so, we very deliberately chose a set of traits and behaviors that we wanted to emphasize, to heighten in people, to really focus on, that we thought would be, highly synergistic and would strengthen the nature of the business, the unique business that we were creating, which was a bank and a sort of a technology-led API-first bank. But as we've grown, and changed, like some of those initial traits became less important, and new ones became more important. And I think that's totally normal and natural. And I mean, the key thing is you have to be able to recognize it and lean into it and embrace it, and take the rest of the organization with you on a little bit of a journey as to why things are changing and why the business is changing and why that's actually okay and normal and desirable, and potentially recognize that when you do that, not everybody is going to come on the journey with you, and for some people, the traits and behaviors that were really important as an early stage business actually don't make them successful or particularly well aligned with what the business needs as a later stage company. And that's fine. I think it's a total non-goal to sort of, ideate about wanting to stay with a company for 10, 15, 20 years. You should work with a company for as long as that relationship is a really good fit for both of you. And you shouldn't assume that it will be, a forever relationship. Sorry, that's a super long ramble. Sorry.
But the good thing is you've touched on every single topic about culture that we're going to talk about. So that's really useful.
Oh, good. Excellent.
We're good. You've covered so much ground. So there are a couple of things in particular you mentioned there that I think would be worth exploring a little bit further. The first one was around the decision that you and Alan took, which is a pretty distinctive one, to almost codify the culture and values before you even hired your first person.
Yeah.
Why was that so important to you?
Well, because as I said, if culture is who you are, and it's it's both a filter, but it's also descriptive, i.e., you use it to select the people that you want to hire, but also definitionally, if you're going to follow that process, it has to reflect the people who are already there. And so if we started hiring before we define this, we might very easily accidentally find that we had painted ourselves into a corner where now we felt like we couldn't choose certain values because we'd already hired, Bob, and Bob had a completely different set of values from us. This is a very unfortunate choice of name. I've just grabbed a random name. Bob is actually our CFO. He's fantastic. I'm not subtweeting Bob here. I'm just grabbing a random name. But we were very, very conscious that we wanted to be super selective about the people from the beginning and not find ourselves in a place where we felt we needed to design the culture around who the first hires were. We did know that we needed to design the culture around ourselves because we weren't going anywhere. And everything that we would do had to be a natural extension of us. That's not to say that we're perfect, right? Alan and I are definitely not perfect. We're very good partners and co-founders, and we do have a bunch of traits that have made us very uniquely well suited to this particular business. But we also know that there are attributes of ours that are not great to over-optimize for and over-index for. And so, we designed the culture around what we thought were not necessarily our best traits, but our best traits for the business that we wanted to create that we knew would be effortless for us to emphasize, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that drives me nuts, absolutely makes me go ballistic, is when I hear about companies bringing in an advisory group to help them define their values. I'm I'm sorry, you needed help? You needed help to understand what your values are? Okay, I don't want to be too mean because obviously I'm in therapy, so obviously I do sometimes need help to understand myself. But the idea that you don't understand what your values are and you need to be told, first of all, is just ridiculous. But secondly, it's you get to this place where you get kind of values designed by committee.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I mean, this is a semi-heretical for someone who works in banking, but I don't think that committees are generally the best forums for making decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what you want is strong design leadership to say, this is the vision that I have. And it's fine for a committee to talk about that and whatever. But for something that needs an architect, architecture by committee, you end up with garbage. You can't do like, this is art. Like, this is what I feel about it. Like, you can't do art by committee. It doesn't work.
Yeah, just dilutes the vision to a point where it's just this middle of the road kind of nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not, you need something strong enough that talks to that like one person you want to hire and probably turns off like the 100 other people who realize, no, this isn't the place for me. Like, it has to be strong enough in its conviction for people to understand.
It's interesting. So I don't think our culture turns anyone off.
No,
but I think
wouldn't say
it
that either.
is very effective when I talk to someone who's clearly not a fit and I'm able to just say why they're not a fit, and they go, yeah, you're right. Like, that's not me.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
that's great, because it's like, I'm not casting aspersions on you. Like, sales is like an example of this, right? Like, our sales team is super thoughtful. They're super consultative. They're very friendly. They're very warm. There is a bit of a stereotype of salespeople sometimes as being kind of pushy and hard charging. And I've definitely interviewed a fair number of salespeople who are like that. And I'm like, look, you're not going to fit in here. And like, here's why. And they go like, oh yeah, nope. That is not how I do this job. And I'm like, great, cool. Like, no problem. Like, just not a fit for you, not a fit for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair enough. And that's why our culture interview process is so good, is so strong, because it helps people kind of figure out a little bit about us along the way,
Yeah.
decide whether this is the right, because obviously it's a two-way thing. Like, they're deciding if
It's
this
a
is going to be the
service.
place they're going to thrive, and if we're going to see them do the same thing. So that's what it's designed to do. The other thing you mentioned was around the fact that we sit at the intersection of banking and technology, and obviously in Silicon Valley they have the mantra of like move fast and break things, and then in our industry that kind of collides with that. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that means when it comes to thinking about our culture and how this like technology element and banking element mesh in a helpful way?
Yeah, I mean, I think so the way that we increasingly think about this is like, it's not move slowly. It is like, choose a speed that ensures that we make no mistakes. Like, and move fast and break things obviously is very lean and it's very efficient, but it does involve making a lot of mistakes, right? And sometimes those mistakes will be expensive. Not always. Often they'll be cheap. That's part of the design, right? Is like, build, test, move on. For us, make no mistakes can be expensive in that it means we do a lot more work up front to understand what we're doing. And we may move more slowly as we move into it, but it also means like, there's no fat. Like, we don't waste effort on anything. And it's just super interesting when you, particularly, I think, compare consumer-led businesses or consumer-oriented businesses to like enterprise-oriented businesses, right? Like, in our lifetime, we have basically like never thrown away work, really. Whereas, if you talk to folks at like Revolut, they're like, oh yeah, like we launch, like 8 new like products like a month across our like, dozens of markets. Or so like 10 new products a month across like our dozens of markets. And we'll probably trash like 8 of those. And I'm like, we would die if we did anything close to that. But what's fascinating about that is like, if you listen to Nick Stronsky talk about that himself, he also acknowledges that like, he can't do the enterprise because he's like, the feedback cycles are so long, the investment that you need to make to get something to fruition is so high that like the approach actually needs to be much closer to our approach of like, we're going to just be super, super deliberate, and we're going to try and move as quickly as we can, but we're going to try and move as quickly as you can with no error. And I mean, the risks that we incur in that, right, are stuff does just take longer. And that is painful. On the other hand, it is a structural advantage in the sense that like, making mistakes in a regulated industry is both expensive in like an obvious way, but it's also expensive in various non-obvious ways, i.e., you destroy trust, you destroy your regulatory relationships. You can, in some cases, sort of trigger regulatory investigations. Like, you can really, really destroy your business very quickly with a fairly small number of mistakes. And so, yeah, it's a very, very different mentality.
Yeah. And I guess it's the fact that culture was such a core root cause of what went wrong in the financial crisis and caused the regulators to react the other way. That it's like it's not just means for us, I guess, and my from my point of view, is it's not just like the competitive advantage side that we see, which is like the oxygen, the things that make people want to do well, be here, like give everything. But it's also like the security element of it too. Is if we're creating these like healthy environments where people can speak up, where we design incentive schemes the right way, don't incentivize. It's so important that we understand why the regulators acted in the way they did in response and why they
Yeah.
see culture as such an important facet of whether an organization is deserving of trust and worthy of like banking license.
I think one of the things that's really quite a big demand that we put on people who work for us, and it's part of why this value of thoughtfulness has served us quite well over the years, is we have quite a high expectation of people who work at Griffin that they are able to really see the big picture. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they can understand everything that's going on everywhere, but it does mean that they really understand how their work impacts the full bank, right? And they understand the business model of the bank. They understand how customers use the products, how their work flows through to that. They understand how the risks that they take on or that the business is exposed to, what the surface area of those risks are. And so when I think about something like the financial crisis, right, like, that was impossible. You just had all these people chasing local maxima with kind of no regard for the sort of the larger picture or the larger potential impact. And I mean, the reality is today we're an insanely complicated business, which actually means we're a small and simple bank, right? Being a bank is inherently just very, very complicated, but we're still small enough that people can really get their arms all the way around the business, and we kind of expect people to be able to do so. I think that's like incredibly cool and powerful, and I hope that we're able to sort of preserve that for like a really long time, because it's one of the things that I think also enables and empowers really ethical behavior, because people really understand how everything that they do flows back to everything else.
Yeah, and that's something that we'll need to make sure still happens as we grow the team as well, and it doesn't sort of start to dissolve for sure. So thinking about things that are distinctive about our culture, our ways of working, it's becoming more distinctive just as organizations are going another direction and encouraging and leaning more towards hybrid environments and mandating days in the office, whereas we're set up from day one to be a remote first org.
Yeah.
And that is coming up for, 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
I think that it'd be interesting to explore together, like, how do you create a thriving culture when everyone's remote and people are together for very limited amounts of time in person? Like, what does it take to create like a successful culture, but staunchly remote first?
So I think there's two parts to this, right? So one part is, what do we need to do as a company to support and foster that? And there's a lot that's in there about ritual, right? So, we throw offsites, at the moment, at least once a year, where we bring everyone together in person for the better part of a week. There's a lot of kind of like more regular touch points within the week where, we do the entire. We'll like every other week we'll do a complete review of the product roadmap with the entire company. Like it's easy to feel like, holy shit, like that's got to be like a super inefficient use of time. But not everyone is talking. Like it's like, all right, cool. All of the engineering managers and the PMs and the execs are going to talk about where we are and what needs to get delivered in the context of what's happening to us as a business, right? Like, have we signed any major new deals that we need to respond to? Are there new regulations that are coming into effect that we need to like plan for, with hard non-movable dates? Are we growing our volumes, sufficiently quickly that we need to be investing in platform scalability? What are the sort of straight through processing rates look like? Do we need to be investing in like the operations side of the tooling and really having that out in front of everyone so everybody understands why and how we do everything? Then we do all hands, which is every other week, which is like, a mix of, again, a wide range of stuff that's relevant to the company, but can also be quite goofy and silly and fun. but then there's this other side of it, which is like not just like how do you create a culture that is sorry, and the other thing I would say is like a tremendous amount of like written artifacts so that knowledge is very easily discoverable and people feel like they can kind of self-serve their way to what they need. And then the other side of this is like the people and what your expectations are of the people. And this goes back, to this kind of, what are you looking for people on the way in? Our expectations of people are that they are very, very autonomous. And if they're really junior and while they're new to the company, obviously they're going to need a little bit more help. But for the most part, we expect people to figure out how to drive, in their role. And if they need help, to ask for it. And really, ideally, if they need help, to go and help themselves and figure out how to do so. And a consequence of that, right, is like our workforce probably does skew older than like most startups, because it's people who have been around the block, who know how startups work, know how banks work, one or the other, often both, who, are like, okay, cool. Like I have tools that will enable me to solve this problem, or I know how this problem can be solved in another company, or, we also have, I think, I don't know what the actual numbers are. And so you can tell me I'm wrong, but my guess is we have objectively, probably quantifiably quite good retention. And so we also have people who have been with us for, in some cases from the beginning, who actually know, oh, right, we made this decision because, historical reason. And so that remains much more discoverable. And I think, what we've learned is this, this works really well for people who have that, high autonomy drive, who are inclined to just solve problems and to figure out how to solve problems. And if people don't have that and they expect to be spoon-fed, or they kind of need process to do their job, those people will tend not to do particularly well.
Yeah, right. And that's one of the things the team often say is the thing they love most about being here, is that they're treated like an adult. They're trusted to do the job. They're trusted to ask for help if they need it.
Yeah.
There's not sort of obstacles or bureaucracy in the way of them just like focusing on what they need to do and just do it in a way that works for them, which I think goes to the remote first element, but also the flexibility around hours. Yeah. And that sometimes can be, take a little bit of time to get used to for people who are not used to that environment. You think they need to ask for permission for things. And it's quite freeing to think, no, I'm trusted to know my calendar.
Yeah.
If I need to pick up my child, I don't have to tell anyone. Like I can own my time, and it's just such a freeing way of being.
I think there's two inputs to that, right? So one is like, Alan and I have always architected the company from the design principle. It's a little bit of kind of golden rule, right? Like we should design, like we're not really employable by other people. We just really don't like working for other people. But like if we're going to work for someone else, we should at the very least design a company that is the sort of company that we would be willing to work for. Yeah. And so like exactly as you say, like if I have to go pick up my kid in the middle of the day, I don't want to have to justify that to anyone, right? It's like, no, I'm a parent. Like I have to do this. Don't worry. I'm still going to get my work done, but like, don't question me. Just let me do this and trust that I will like sort my work out. And if you give people that level of freedom, it breeds a profound level of loyalty, I think.
For sure.
There's a wider set of theory about this, which talks about, I think I'm going to use the terms correctly, but like type X companies and type Y companies. And like, I forget which is which, but one fundamentally views employees with distrust and is like, these are lazy slackers who will steal from me if I don't, keep a constant eye on them and make sure that they're doing what I ask them to do. And then there's like a type Y company, which is like, I'm just going to like, what the objectives are, like, and like, I am here to buy your skills, like however you need to do the job, like you do the job, like, and so in general, you will find that like type X company versus type Y company will map to like lower wage versus higher wage, and like lower skill to like higher skill. But like, just because that's like a general mapping, like there's no like particular justification behind that. And there's also no consistency behind that, right? So you still have, lots of like startups that are run by like terrifying little despots who like are happy to micromanage the crap out of everyone who works there. And it's like, why are you hiring all these like incredibly skilled and talented people and then telling them the detail of how to do their job and micromanaging them on stuff that actually has nothing to do with their output?
Yeah.
It's a very, very cultural thing, and it comes from this like fundamental question of like, do you trust the people that work for you, or do you even want to trust the people that work for you?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people in leadership positions genuinely not only don't trust their people, they don't want to. Like, they actually don't understand the appeal of that. And I'm like, if I can't trust you, you're fired immediately. But my default position is like, I fucking hope I can trust all of you.
Yeah. But it's like the only way to know if you can trust people is to trust them in a way.
Yeah.
There's one school of thought.
Yeah. And I think what we've done has been, to recognize that if you do trust people blindly, you can set yourself up to be hurt.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's to put parameters in place that make sense for that. So like, one of the things that we do that I think is like totally emblematic of the culture, right, is like expense management. Everyone gets an expense card. You can spend up to $2,000 a month on it, which is like actually like a pretty decent chunk of money. And the only real rule is you have to be able to justify this as being in the best interest of the business. And if you can and you abuse this, we'll fire you immediately. Right. And it turns out that's only ever been abused by one person ever. And it's like, that's great. That's working well.
But this is how you should design people things. It's like often if you read a handbook or an HR policy, it sounds like you're going to commit the worst possible crime in the world and you're an awful person and how dare you work here.
Yeah.
Like disciplinary policies.
It's a risk management.
It's like, but actually, 99.5% of the time, you don't need to worry about what's written in your disciplinary policy or your grievance policy, because the chances of them being a thing, if you've hired really well, is extremely low. So you may as well write it in a way that is based on the reality of the culture that you have, which is use your best judgment, which is most of the time the default thing. You don't really need to write these things if you feel like you've got the core elements set and have been designed intentionally from the beginning. Yeah.
I mean, we talk about this as like the fundamental safety principles of the company, right? Like principle 1 is like use your best judgment.
Yeah.
Principle 2 is like ask if you're unsure. And principle 3 is like, if you don't do these, we'll fire you.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's really simple.
But then I remember there's something that you've said before that sticks in my mind, which I think you were talking about you and Alice co-founders, and if you were like a dull version of yourselves. And in my mind, I imagine that it's like you're only where I'm going now, right? A Woody from Toy Story kind of doll, like that, like a version of you and Alice.
Oh, right. Yeah. Like, the stereotypes, the stereotypes of ourselves.
And if you pull your string, you would probably say, like, have you tried talking to that person? So now, instinctively, I know that's what you would say, because a lot of what culture is to me is like, and the bit you talked about earlier, is how you train people. And it's like training the instinct. Yeah. And like your instinct is very clear. And Alan's one is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And everyone knows that. So this is an instinct that people have been taught. And then mine might be, what does your instinct tell you? Which is like my one.
We've been talking about this recently.
We were talking about it yesterday.
I really love that, by the way. Yeah.
So I feel like between us, like each of us in the leadership team probably have, like if we were one of those dolls, like catchphrase that we come out with. And that's the instinct that you teach. Yeah. And that's what happens when you're not in the room. And that's what you want to happen. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's super interesting. It's just like those default things that like underpin everything, like underpin all of the ways that you design and architect the processes and experiences around them. Yeah. Just cool. Yeah. Are you imagining you and Alice dolls?
No, I'm trying to think about what the other leadership team members would say.
Okay.
I feel like Dora's our chief risk officer. I think hers would say, what does the policy say? Mm-hmm. Which is like, again, I mean, very often like this kind of question. Is like, hey, Dora, like, can I do this? And she's like, what? Well, I don't know. Why don't you tell me? There's a policy for it. Have you read the policy? What does the policy say? It's like, yeah, that's what you want your chief risk and compliance officer to say. I feel like Bob's would be something along the line of like, don't you think we could do this a little bit better?
Yeah, maybe. Or stop swearing. I saw that. Stop swearing. I saw that in one of his comments recently. Sorry, Bob. Like now, sorry, that's what your doll says. Phoebe's like really big on accountability, right? And owning and like wanting people to be like fully embracing the fact that they're responsible for something. So I don't know what her catchphrase would be, but I feel like she's got this like really strong ability.
The catchphrase is a question, I think. I don't know what Phoebe's or Ed's would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I feel like their catchphrase is actually like, "Don't worry, I'll handle this."
Yeah, it would be, don't worry, I'll handle this.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I've got it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. We just need someone to make these into dolls now. Make us into dolls now. So.
Oh God.
There
This is gonna be, you can do this with like AI and get like
yeah.
little,
Oh no. Oh yeah. That's so easy now. Oh no. We
like
should have started
little like
this.
Duplo figures almost.
Yeah.
Or Lego
Well,
figures.
Elliot is trying to get some more merch, so maybe he'll surprise us with some
There we go.
creepy dolls. We talk a little bit about this highly autonomous environment where we trust everyone, but we also do have like a high performance element to our culture. We have a very high bar for people. We use things like the Keeper test for us to be able to distinguish between okay performance and good enough performance. And we use lots of different tools to do that. But like, talk to me a little bit about what a high performance culture looks and feels like and how you think we've been able to do that here.
Yeah. I mean, so I think, one of the things that I alluded to earlier, right, is like how culture evolves as the organization evolves. And one of the things that we went on a little bit of a learning journey for, which was painful at the time, was, when we were in kind of build mode or authorization mode, stuff could just take a long time. And, yes, there was always the threat of us running out of runway as a business, but like there wasn't, any more immediate demand than that. And that threat of running out of runway could often be very abstract. Whereas, now that we are a serious business that, has customers and serious volume, like there are real other stakeholders that we are accountable to, right? Like, and especially, you're going through the authorization process. You're accountable to your investors. There's a degree to which you're accountable to regulators, but you're not a regulated business yet. So you're not like really accountable to them. You're trying to prove that you can be trusted. Whereas like once you're up and running, like you're very accountable to regulators. You're very accountable to your customers. You're now still accountable to your investors. And so, there was a real shift for us in kind of moving from, oh, I'm working on this, when is it going to be done? Like, I don't know, it'll be done when it's done, to like, no, like it's got to be done next month. Like, and if it's not going to be done next month, like we are going to have a serious problem. And so, I mean, that's been a big cultural shift for us. I think, as you move into being like an operating business with revenue and customers, financial discipline also comes into focus, where it's like, okay, the amount of money you spend every month is no longer abstract. Like it can get objectively measured against other businesses that look like you by both your current investors and potential outside investors when you're raising money. And it's like, are you achieving an acceptable level of revenue, product growth, velocity for the team size that you have, for the amount of money that you're spending? And so you start to get benchmarked in like a very real way that you have to make often some very difficult decisions around. And then, we look at this on an individual level too, right? And so we break down, within our kind of like performance review framework. We've got 3 kind of like normal like levels of performance review, which are kind of significant, solid, and inconsistent. As you can probably guess, like inconsistent is a bad rating. And if you get like even 2 of those in a row, like you probably are, your job is at risk. Significant though is like, cool, like you're doing a good job. But if you like really want to know like what the hope and expectation is for you, it's that you're having like a transformative impact. And that's like the special A+, S tier rating. And the key thing with having it, with what it means to have a transformative impact, is that like your impact on the organization is so objectively felt that like everybody around in your like immediate blast radius would also agree that you are having a transformative impact. And if there is any disagreement about it, you're not having a transformative impact.
Yeah.
Right. And so it makes it a very, very hard level of achievement to and sort of performance to achieve. Almost impossible also to achieve for a prolonged period of time. Because sort of definitionally, right, like if you are having that level of impact, you will have made a material change in the surface area of the part of the organization that you are working in. It's very hard to be materially changing the surface area of the part of the organization that you are working in, every 6 months, basically. Like that's just a very, very, very hard ask. It's very difficult to be having that level of impact consistently. But it's also like, it's a very powerful bar, to set, and a sort of expectation to set for people. And then, like if you're doing, solid, then like that's fine. But like, obviously, our hope for high performance, high autonomy people is like, they should inherently want to, know that they are doing more and feel that they're doing more.
Yeah. And then our job as leaders is to find the stretch. So like for those people in the transformative space, like how do we help them have a greater one, or put them in a different direction to stretch their ability a little bit further?
Yeah.
Give them
Often
interesting
it's
stuff.
not about having a greater one. It's about saying, okay, cool. You've just been on a journey, and you've taken
Yeah.
the organization on a journey over the last 6, 9, 12 months. What is the next journey?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
it's not going to be more of this. It's very unlikely to be
Yeah,
more of
yeah,
this. It's going to be
like-
something different.
Yeah, like you said, they're unlikely to have the same impact and the same role doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Because
they're gonna have to
definitionally,
do-
if you're
it's not
doing the
gonna be
same
that.
thing,
You're not.
6 months later, it's no longer transformative. The
Yeah.
transformation has already occurred.
Yeah, exactly. It's about the fact that you can't be like transformative or have a significant impact if you're falling down in your ability to demonstrate the behaviors or values. So
Yeah.
it's like one and the same thing. You can only be transformative if you are also actively contributing culturally. If you're not, or you're like being a jerk, like you just can't be transformative. Like you can't be significant, because it's like one and the same thing. So we're quite clear about that as well. And we're kind of evolving our approach a little bit, going into the next cycle, where we've distinguished between them into making them more clearly partnered as well.
Mhm.
Because I feel as though like the more that we can reinforce it, in the sense that, sometimes other members of the exco will tell me, they view culture as like the worst behavior you're willing to tolerate, for example.
Mhm.
That becomes your culture.
Yeah.
Like I agree with that, but it's also the sense of how we hold our leaders to this performance bar, and understanding that the performance of their team is reflective of their own performance. So if they're not happy with the team's performance,
Yeah.
then it's unlikely that you is going to be happy with their performance. Like it's totally,
Yeah.
like they own that. Like
Yeah.
they're responsible for making sure that the bar is kept high, for having conversations that might be considered difficult but are necessary, just because we feel like, we try to encourage different ways for people to give feedback and for that to feel natural. Because you were talking a little about rituals earlier, and one of the things we brought in the last year, following a session we had with the table group, was the concept of a feedback circle. So instead of like giving feedback and having like a super long process, we tried to turn it around really quickly. So like
Yeah.
it closes in 2 weeks. It doesn't take a month or 3 months to do a performance cycle.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that we tried to shortcut that is, instead of having everyone write down all of the feedback looking backwards that they have about that person, we just get the relevant people in the room and we ask them to share 2 things, which is like one thing that they appreciate about the person and one thing that they think would help them be even better. And you give it to the person, you talk to the person face to face so they can ask questions. And it's just, you get like it can be a little bit intimidating the first time you do it. I think everyone's felt quite nervous the first time we were asked to do this. But then when you leave, you do feel you have a complete set of information, and you can spot if there's a theme or a trend emerging. You're like, oh, everyone said this thing, or everyone had this thing. And it's just in the moment you have it, and then it's on you to then act on it. And I feel like it's a really refreshing way of being able to have a conversation that aligns to the way that we do things when you think about feedback.
Yeah. I want to pick up on something you said at the start of what you were just saying, which is in a slightly different direction than when you ended, which was this idea of kind of like performance and culture leadership being linked to each other. I think that's really important, but I also think that what's not said there is the inverse of that is like also really true, which is like this is not a social like organization. This is not a social club.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a great fit for us culturally, and if you are not like delivering, that is not good enough.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I saw when I was at Airbnb, which is also a company that's like very, very well known for having a very strong culture, is like there was a degree of clickiness with people who were, like cultural exemplars, but who were really kind of just running around playing games and like not actually having like a high level of, commercial impact in terms of like moving the company forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's really risky and dangerous that, you end up just sort of with like cliques right within the organization that everyone sort of champions because, oh, they're so fun and they're so values aligned. It's like, no, like we're not here to fuck spiders. Like this is like this is that's my favorite Australian expression.
I love that.
Right. Like, like we're here to build like a serious organization and a serious commercial enterprise. And like, yeah, it matters to us a lot how we get there. And we think that those two are fundamentally linked, and that fundamental linkage flows in both directions.
Yeah, I completely agree. You can't be one without the other. And there's memes about personality hires for a reason.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like it's not lost on me that like the personality hires that we have are also objectively like some of our highest performers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Like I feel like because of the road we've gone on in the last year, even if it wasn't us calling it out, I just don't think there's much tolerance for anyone in the organization, for everyone not to be pulling their weight 100%. Like everyone relies on everyone. I just don't think, we created an environment where people would want.
No, there's
very known.
And I think this is one of the things. So what's interesting to me is that like one of the, and we're kind of drawing to a close here, but one of the caricatures, right, of like a remote first organization is like, you don't know if someone's not pulling your weight. But actually that's nonsense. In some ways, it's actually much easier to tell, right? Because it's not getting disguised by, oh, like I saw them at the water cooler. I see them at their desk. They seem to be working hard, right?
Yeah.
It's like, no, like, if I don't see someone for a week or two and I don't see any like work output from them, like they're not working. Right? Like,
all the
you know
other
what I mean?
stuff falls away.
Like literally there's no like the remote work done well actually means there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
Right? Like you are much more nakedly defined by your work output.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean like we are a much I think we're doing a very good job of sort of tying the need for a performance culture to, like a very, very high autonomy, high trust environment. And the people that we work with like have earned that right. I mean, that they are fantastic. And like, it is just super, super cool to be surrounded by people like that all the time because it's really inspiring, right? It's very inspiring for everybody to want to up their game because of what they see the people around them doing.
Yeah. And exactly, that's one of the things we talk about sometimes is around the fact that the experience of working with the peers that you have, the working practice and ways of working we have, and all the other things you learn here that you would sort of travel with you. Like they're things that regardless of wherever your career goes next, they're things that you leave changed by in a positive way. And I think that's a really cool thing.
It is a really cool thing. It probably also is part of why a lot of people leave us and then come back.
Yeah, we do have people
come back. We have like
a
very high return rate.
I know. I love that. I love when people come back. I get very excited with people coming back. And we've been really fortunate that, like, even when things don't end in a way we would have liked, for example, we leave and they left feeling as though it's still somewhere that we'd want to work. And it's the same if someone interviews with us, they might think, well, this wasn't the right time for me, but I still want to work there.
Yeah. Hopefully, I think we've just hired someone. Certainly, I was like an offer going out to someone who I interviewed like 6 years ago. Yeah. Right. Which I think is like, the world is very small. And your sort of impressions matter a lot.
Should we do some quick fire questions then to finish?
Sure. Hit me.
I mean, I don't think these are necessarily quick fire questions.
Okay. Well, I think we don't have.
Okay. We'll
keep it to like 2 minutes of quick fire questions.
Okay. Well, let's just do 2 questions.
Okay.
And we can try and answer them briefly. Okay. So if you were going to recommend a book to a fintech founder or leader about culture, what would you choose? I have 2, so I'm going to choose 2, just in case you decide to not follow the...
To a founder specifically or to a leader?
A leader or a founder. You choose.
My 2 go-to books, and I've read both of them multiple times, and they definitely get less good on multiple reads, which is like, I'm so sorry. But like, if you're just looking for like kind of like naked raw impact, the two that work best for me are Essentialism, which just has one lesson, which is do less stuff but better, and Powerful, which is Patty McCord's book on kind of designing the culture at Netflix.
I love that one too.
Yeah.
The others I would add are I love the book Crucial Conversations.
Oh yeah.
Because it gives you a really good framework, because you've realized that a lot of the time you spend is, I mean, this is why your catchphrase is your catchphrase.
Yeah.
But it's when there's like high emotions, people disagree, the stakes are high, how to have it gives you a really clear framework to have a really effective conversation, which I think is just like invaluable in life and work.
That book has been totally transformative for me. 100%. Amazing
so I love
book.
that. I would always recommend it. I recommend it to everyone.
Yeah.
So I feel like everybody should read this book.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And the other one on the more human experience side, and it's not specifically related to our industry, but it's Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. And it's all about, I love books like this though. And it's just one of many that are in a similar vein, where it basically tells you about how like remarkable, memorable experiences are made up of like lots of tiny, thoughtful things. And any book that reminds me of that just like makes my heart sing, because it's basically the thing I care about most in life, because it's what makes life to me.
Yeah.
So I feel like you're not going to go wrong if you want to create customer experiences, people experiences. It's like just a really good kind of reminder of all of those things.
I'm going to throw out another book, and I've mentioned this like very recently, and it is not really an appropriate response to the prompt, but it's Too Big to Fail.
Oh yeah,
it's like there's a very specific thing in there that I think is really interesting and important and impactful for people, which is Too Big to Fail. You know, is a book about the financial crisis. It's nonfiction, and the thing that I took away from it is that in the height of the financial crisis, the leaders of the U.S. government were puking in trash cans all the time, because they were under such an immense amount of personal stress and pressure that they like literally could not stop themselves from vomiting. I think that is fascinating. I think it is so humanizing to like remember that like the adults in the room in a crisis are just as human as like anybody else, right? They are prone to the same physical reactions of extreme anxiety and stress as any of us. I think it's profoundly humanizing. And it's very grounding, I think, to like remember that.
Yeah, anything about that era is super interesting.
Yeah, it's obviously like hyper pertinent to anyone who works in banking.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I really wish they would make that play come to London, the one I saw in the summer, which is totally irrelevant to people listening to this, but the one called Make It Happen, which is all about the downfall and the role of the person in that.
Yeah.
Which is very good. And okay, so maybe one super quick one.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Slack channel? What is it?
Oh God.
You have to say gardening, but you were not even in that one.
I'm not in gardening.
I don't know. Why are you not in the gardening Slack channel?
I think my favorite Slack channel is the Connect Customers channel, because I just love seeing what's happening with our customers.
Yeah.
It's the one that like I just get like if I see that there's unread messages, I just get a positive hit of dopamine.
That's fair. I can see why. I do like that channel. I love when people create like really quirky, unique ones. Like Will and Phoebe's team made this. It's like London food recommendations. It's just like a personal food blogger in London, which I just love. I love the appreciation channel, of course, because we do that in all hands, but also have the channel. Yeah. And people take the time to write really thoughtful appreciation messages, and you just know that it really like has meant something to the person who receives it, which I think is really sweet.
Yeah.
And gardening, because I made that channel the other day. It's good. Everyone, I found my little tribe of fellow gardeners. Although I do feel like I missed a trick in not giving it a cultivation related name, but never mind.
That's okay. Cool. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, likewise.
The end.